Welcome to When Life Stops, a podcast on finding new meaning after loss, with your host, Daytola and Stella. We are both moms who have loved and lost.
Every week, you would hear more about our stories, relatable interviews, as well as practical tips that you can apply to help you find new meaning after loss. Let's dive in. Hello, welcome back to this episode of the When Life Stops podcast. Wow, we've enjoyed reading from you and we've enjoyed hearing about how what we have been sharing has resonated with you. Thank you so much for all your comments, for sharing our podcast. We do not take this for granted at all, that you take time out to come listen to what Stella and I have to share.
I know.
We're really grateful. Now, we know that last episode was quite heavy.
Oh, yes.
Even we felt it here in the studio.
It was deep.
It was heavy. So we thought, today we would start off with something light.
Oh, yeah.
Before we dive into yet another heavy topic.
One.
Oh my Lord, help us. So Stella.
Yes.
I want you to share with our
gosh.
audience,
No.
our listeners, something dumb or
dear.
crazy or silly or funny or a combination of all of those things that you have done in your life.
Oh gosh.
Go for it. Go for it.
Gosh, do you really want to hear this?
Yeah.
Okay, so I remember going and signing up for a beauty pageant.
What? What
I actually
did you say?
contested in a beauty pageant.
Okay.
Like, I know.
Stella, I know you're
5'4".
beautiful. I know you're beautiful
Yes.
and all.
Yeah,
but what were you thinking?
I mean, I was so confident in my beauty and in my abilities. I actually came, I was second runner-up. So you see?
Wow. How? Who was judging? Where was this? Was this in uni?
This was in secondary school. This was
okay.
in secondary school. So yeah.
Wow, second runner up. Well done.
Thank you. I believed in myself. If only I was 6 foot
There's
or
actually-
5'8".
There's actually a lesson in there. You believed in
I
yourself.
believed. So yeah.
And you
I went for
nearly
it.
got the
So
the,
yeah,
the
I know.
trophy.
If looking back now, I would never have even ventured.
I know, right? You're like, who born me? Okay.
Oh, dear.
So drum roll for my dumb
Let's
crazy
hear
silly
it.
thing.
Let's hear it.
So I think it was in third year, was it fourth year of uni? I cannot remember. But I left an exam. So basically what I did was I finished writing a 2-hour exam. I think it was for 2 hours. I wrote it in 1 hour just because I wanted to go see a movie with my friends at the
You okay?
cinema. I know, right?
As in
Who does that?
so the movie was more important than passing the.
I had to
my
think about. I
goodness.
can't even remember the name of the movie.
Oh my gosh!
But
The things we
the
did
thing
when we were young.
You didn't ask me if I passed.
Did you pass?
I passed, yeah. Of
show
course, girl.
off, show off, show off.
I passed. But that was a crazy thing to do. I
Oh
can
my
imagine my
goodness.
daughter or my son come to tell me they did that. How?
Well, try it.
Exactly. So I'm hoping my parents don't hear this. But hey, here I am now. I'm doing well. So I'm fine.
Feeling like a brain buster.
Exactly. Okay.
Oh, dear.
So moving on to today's topic.
Yeah.
Another heavy one, but
Yes.
stay with us. We are going to be talking about planning a funeral
Wow.
and what comes with it.
Wow.
We are going to be looking at, how to plan, not necessarily how to plan a funeral, but more around the process, the emotions that come with it,
Yeah.
what to expect, dealing with the mourners that come to commiserate. Because most times we don't expect these losses.
Yeah.
Especially, it's different if it's like an older person who has lived a long life. People tend to plan for their funerals, right? I think.
Yeah.
But if it's a baby or husband,
yeah.
it's something you're not
Unexpected
planning
happening.
for. Yeah, unexpected. So before we actually talk about funerals, Stella, let's kind of talk about, the days before. In our case, we had to have an inquest
Okay.
because obviously our son died unexpectedly. And it's funny, when I remember that day, after the ambulance came, the next thing we saw was the police. And
Yeah.
in my head, I'm like, wait, why are the police here? And, they were asking questions, looking around the house. And then there was this inquest thing that took a while. And so we had to get like an interim death certificate from the coroner's office, because they had to do like an autopsy to find out that there was no negligence. It wasn't like we killed our baby and all of those things. So it was the interim death certificate that allowed us to actually choose a date for the funeral,
Yeah.
because before then we couldn't, because they had to do an inquest and all of those things. So I think that's quite common when a baby dies. But was that your experience as well?
Well, because we had a diagnosis, because Tamara's death was not a surprise to the medical practitioners. It was a surprise to us, the parents, because we did not believe that she was going to die, but they expected it to happen. That was the prognosis. So it wasn't, seen as anything of a surprise.
Wow.
So we just, it was bang on. Okay, before we knew it, we had people coming to talk to us about, okay, this is what needs to happen next. This was going to happen next. And it was a shock because here I was still coming to terms with the fact that I wasn't going home with my baby. And the next thing you're telling me is, okay, you need to come and, plan a funeral. You need to choose the date. You need to buy, get a certificate for the land where she's going to be buried. And I'm like, what's going on? So it was a big, big, big shock to my system. My husband and I, we were like, huh? What? How? So it is quite shocking, especially when a death is unexpected. And even when it's not expected, even when it is, expected, especially the person is old and, in hospital and it's coming. Even at that, the reality of dealing with it is huge.
Yeah.
So how was dealing with an inquest for you, Detola?
It was traumatic. It was traumatic because the process involved, thankfully, we didn't have to attend the inquest hearing, but there was a hearing.
Oh, wow.
I'm telling you, it was really traumatic from that point of view. They had to, and I only found out I think it was from what do you call them? Health visitor who was in attendance. The health visitor, and I think every person involved in this care.
Professional.
So I guess they basically wanted to see that there was no negligence on our part and also on the what's it called now, on the hospital's part as well. So just hearing that, and I did request for the reports because it was quite extensive. When the policemen put their own report down on, they came to the house and what they saw of their observations from visiting the house and the health visitor stuff. So that was where we got to know the cause of death, which apparently was para-influenza pneumonia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it wasn't actually the Down syndrome that took him. It was the pneumonia.
Wow.
He got, and again, like we talked about the last episode on guilt, that returned. And this was a few months after, because he had died in December.
Yeah.
And then the inquest thankfully, we were able to bury him in February. With the interim death certificate.
Wow.
But the final report came in April also.
Wow.
So it was a long, traumatic.
So that kind of just keeps you in that place limbo, where you can't even move forward.
You don't know. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun at all.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's we don't consider all of that and how that impacts us.
Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, at the point where we now got the final report, I felt like my grief started all over again because now I knew the reason of his death. So it was quite deep and traumatic.
Wow.
So let's talk a bit about our experience of planning a funeral. So how was it like for you planning a funeral for Tamara?
It was awkward to start with. The bereavement officer handed us a list of funeral homes and we were asked to choose, and I remember our visit to the funeral director's home. It was the most unreal. I just couldn't imagine that I was going to a funeral director to talk about burying my child. Gosh, it was hard. It was hard. And I dreaded going, but thankfully my husband he was brave, and I think he was trying to be strong for me, more for me, but he was the brave shoulder that I leaned on, going. And when we got there, it seemed pretty chilled out and everyone was trying to be nice, obviously. I was so immersed in my grief and, I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to smile, nothing. Let's just get on with it. But I think when the funeral director asked me to talk about Tamara, that was, the turning point in that experience, because I just had so much to say about this beautiful child, and he was so, I think the funeral office was run by a husband and wife. And so they were so gracious. They sat with us and they were so eager to hear all about our little girl. And this is why we talk about when you go to visit with people who have experienced loss. It's so important to ask them questions about their loved ones. I know people say it's awkward. Just ask them, what, tell me about your son, tell me about your daughter, tell me about your dad or your mom. And I felt so much comfort just being able to share about her favorite things. I immediately relaxed, and the whole process of choosing a casket and all the details just progressed swiftly just because of that turning point. So it was not nice, but we got through it.
Wow. So thank you for sharing that. In my case, or in our case, we also had to choose a funeral home, but thankfully from the onset, my church family was involved. So they kind of chose one for us, because I couldn't begin to imagine choosing a funeral home for my baby. So they chose one, and the only key part was we needed to go in to answer a few questions and sign some papers. And that was one of the most terrible meetings or sessions that I've ever had in my life, because here you are discussing funeral arrangements for your baby.
Wow.
And unlike you, I didn't get the tell me about your baby. It was very professional, and yes, they were nice, but it was just straight to the point. So would you want to dress him in home clothes, or would you? We just said take care of it. We couldn't, because in my head I'm like, what am I gonna? I couldn't begin to process that. They were asking different questions. Do you want to? I can't remember the points when we were asked if we wanted to cremate him. I'm like, no, we're not cremating anybody here, So they asked about caskets. Do you want it to be open? They're like, no, we don't advise you to have, because it's a baby. Let it be a closed thing, casket. The questions were many
questions.
And thankfully, like you, my husband was, strong for me, strong for us. I cried. I was just crying. I couldn't even talk too much. It was really, I don't think I will ever forget that day. But like I said, that was the only time we had to engage with the funeral directors of the funeral home. My church took care of everything. And today I say a big thank you. And I have to give a big shout out to Chapel of Life, because they just took care of everything, from choosing I think we chose the casket, but they bought it. The cemetery, we had to choose the cemetery. There were 2 or 3 options. We chose the one closest to our home. So but they took care of everything else. And I'm so glad that we had that. So one advice would have for anyone listening here is try and involve people with the main planning.
Yes.
Don't try and take it on, because it is a lot. Oh my goodness, it is a lot.
It is a lot. I also experienced such love from my church community. We lived in Eastbourne. So we lived in London and then we moved to Eastbourne, and my daughter died in Eastbourne. So my church community in London was still very much a part of her journey. Remember I shared with you how they were praying every night. And so from the moment, she took her last breaths, they were the first people on the phone and they were with us every step of the way. I was so moved with compassion when they turned up for the funeral with a bus full of people.
Oh, wow.
They drove all the way from London to Eastbourne. We had the support of our pastors, Pastor Shola and Pastor Bimbo, and then the Liberty Church, the Trinity Chapel, that is now part of, that has now become the Liberty Church London. But it was just amazing, and that's why we say grief must be done in community.
Exactly.
I mean, we were alone if we didn't have them. It would have been unbearable if we didn't have them. So yeah.
Wow. Awesome. So, I mean, looking back now, I'm trying to think of what I would have done differently. And I can't think of anything I would have done differently. I know some people might have been, they might have wanted to be more involved in the, but I couldn't. I just couldn't handle being involved in the nitty gritty of the planning or anything. I'm glad that we had a few friends and family there with us. I do remember that folks from Nigeria, and we need to touch on this a little bit, called and they were like, oh, because traditionally I don't know if it's the whole of Nigeria, but in Yoruba land, parents are not meant to know where their children are buried.
Wow. Oh,
is that the same with you?
No, that's not.
Okay,
that's not. It's. I think it's just the Yoruba culture and a few other cultures that do that.
And it's a terrible culture,
it's just
if I may
such
say
an
so myself.
injustice to women,
because
to not just to women, to parents who lose their children.
Because imagine not knowing where your child has been buried.
Honestly.
And I remember folks calling, my parents calling and saying, oh, they don't think I should go, and my brother should go represent. And I point blank told them, no, that's not how it's done in the UK. We don't do things like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I'm like, I have to know where my child is buried. It doesn't make sense for me not to know. So I'm glad that I stuck my gun. And of course, it's not like they were coming from a place of culture and this is how it's done.
Yeah.
But for me, I knew that I needed to know where my child was buried. So and I'm glad that I'm in the UK. Because imagine if I was in Nigeria, that decision would have been taken out of my hands, more or less. And I've heard of people who, to date, are still carrying that burden of not knowing where their child was buried.
Yeah,
and that must be just heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking, Detola. You see, in my support group, I can't tell you how many women have experienced that. I have held hands and cried with so many ladies who are still stuck because they didn't attend their children's funeral. They didn't know anything about it. They were told, you can't go, don't go. And so it's culture.
Yeah.
Culture gets in the way of grief because culture dictates how people should grieve. And so they're oblivious to the fact that this has happened, I should not go. And that in a way kind of, puts you in a place where you can't fully grieve. Yeah. And it's really, really, really destructive. I don't know how the culture is going to change, but I think it's just, a personal decision that one has to make. If you can make that decision to insist that,
exactly.
I want to be
and
there.
let culture be damned. Sorry.
It's difficult. It's difficult because,
it is.
We are in the UK, so it's easy to say.
It's easier to say.
It's easier to say, but women who are back home in Africa, this is their reality. So what do you do with that?
Yeah.
And I hope that somehow things can begin to change.
I hope so too.
Just so the women can go through this whole process of going through grief and, healing.
Yeah. And our heart really goes out to anyone who's listening, who maybe this is your experience, and I'm praying that God will give you the completeness that you need, because closure might be hard for you, but I'm believing and praying that God will give you a way to complete it, with not knowing where your child has been buried.
Yeah.
So, Stella, what would you have done differently with regards to Tamara's funeral?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. I think we had a beautiful celebration of life for her. And I still remember that day, we asked everyone to wear white and we were allowed to share as much and as little as we wanted. So I don't have it, I don't wish I had done anything differently. The only regret I have is that I didn't have pictures. I didn't take pictures on the day. I was just so immersed in my grief and overwhelmed. I didn't think about pictures, taking pictures. But it's etched in my memory forever, and that's so powerful.
That's powerful.
So I don't have any regrets, but I remember the generosity of my church members, the love. And I think that was one of the things that really helped me, that really healed me. The love from my church family, the Liberty Church, love from my pastors, the fact that they were present, and after the funeral they came home and broke bread with us. They brought food, actually. So they brought the food that they ate with us and stayed with us. It was not like, okay, we're done, let's hurry off. And it made such a big difference. So when I remember the funeral, I remember how comforting it was. And I think for anyone who is seeking to support people, you want to think about comfort, the comfort that your presence brings, the things that you can do to make that traumatic experience easy, just being there, offering them the gift of your presence. And that's what I got.
Wow, amazing. For us, we asked everyone not to wear black. You could wear whatever, so that was good. We had a small crowd. I didn't want anyone to follow me home. Only a few of my friends did. So I didn't, I didn't feel up to having people. But thankfully as well, our church family organized food. So everyone got like a pack of food to take home with them. And like I said, just a few of my friends came home with us. But apart from that, I think it was a wonderful ceremony. We had friends I didn't, but friends took pictures and a few video clips here and there. So the burial went well. Now, so moving on from the funeral day, the other shocker that I had was registering Morakin Caleb's death.
Wow,
that was a big one. Now, I thought, okay, I'll just go. I think my husband, I can't remember if he was still in the country then because he travels a lot for work. But I thought, okay, I'll just go in and out type thing. But thank God I got the sense, or the Holy Spirit ministered to me to get someone to come with me. Because it was the second traumatic experience.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was a straightforward meeting, but just the questions. And it was... to think that a few months ago, I was in the same place, registering he and his sister, his twin sister. I'm not even sure if I think I've mentioned before that he's a twin. Registering his birth and his sister's birth. And now here I am at the same place, registering his death.
Oh, wow.
A few months later. And that was just, that broke me. That broke me, and I would recommend not doing it alone.
Yeah, going with someone.
Go with someone.
Yeah.
How was your experience?
My husband went to get the death certificate. He went to register the death. But when I held that death certificate in my hand, and we always made a joke because when we named Tamara, when my husband went to register her birth, he put all her names on the birth registration. So she had like how many names? So Tamara, Anu Oluwapo, Ogazineme, Ginanga Z.
Do they allow? I thought they only allowed 3 names.
Oh my goodness, her name had to be abbreviated. So she had like TAOG Agwo on her birth certificate. And I was just looking at this birth certificate and I was like, oh my goodness, my TAOG, and it was so final. Holding that piece of paper. When a year ago, I was holding her birth certificate. So it can be traumatizing. It's these little things that compound the grief journey. And that's why we felt it was so important to talk about it and share that whatever it is you're feeling, these are normal experiences. These are things that you need to expect. These are normal. And so rather than run away from it, embrace it. Embrace it.
It is painful, but how else but just embrace? So here in the UK, there is a service that I found. I think it was the health visitor who had mentioned it. That the point where after you register the death, there's something called a Tell Us Once service. I'm not sure if it was there at the time when
I'm not sure.
Yeah. So basically, with that Tell Us Once service, all you need to do is give them the information of your loved ones, and they go on to report your loved one's death to every other government organization
that you're involved with.
That the child, not just the child, your family member was involved in. So they would let all the different services know. So, for example, if it was an older person who passed away, if there was things like bank statement,
council tax,
anything government related, they will filter so that way you're not having to call like 1,000,001 people to tell them that my loved one has passed away. So I think that's a very good service, and we use that service. So that way, we just reported his death once because he was getting the child's benefits.
Okay.
What's it called? Yeah. So that way, I think they kind of informed them.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure they informed hospitals because guess what? Just 2 months ago,
Wow.
I got a letter from, because one of his appointments was with, what's the name of this children hospital in
Great
London?
Ormond Street.
Is it that one? I can't remember what it's called. There's one particular for children. Maybe it's that one.
Yeah.
And then they sent a letter saying, oh, we are discharging Moraki Okele because we no longer need to see him.
Oh,
I was
wow.
livid.
Oh,
In a long
wow.
time, I hadn't felt angry, but I was so angry. Like, didn't my GP inform you that he's
wow.
gone?
So
You know,
that
and they were
just-
basically saying, oh, that we haven't heard back from you, so we're taking him on that. Oh, it's just,
Oh,
I wasn't
wow.
impressed with that.
Oh wow, that
But-
would have been
Yeah.
that would have been deep. You know, it kind of just sets you back.
Exactly. He did set me back for a day or so, but afterwards, you know, I was okay. So again, you know, try and, if you're in the UK, I'm not sure about how it is in other countries. Find out if they have a service like that for you. So let's talk about after the funeral, because you didn't make use of that service, did you?
No,
Okay.
no. I think we just had a health visitor who coordinated her care. So
Okay.
she had close to 8 or 10 healthcare professionals working with her. So it was a system where one person was in touch with her, every other person was updated.
Right.
So we
Well,
didn't
that's
have
good.
to
Yeah,
do.
good.
They took everything off us.
that's good.
You know, and that's the beauty of the country that we're in. They kind of help that transition occur. Like I remember, because my daughter had to have all this health, you know, equipment in the house. She had to have a CPAP machine, you know, suction machines and all sort. After the funeral, I couldn't stand seeing it.
course.
So I just had to ring them and say, please, can you guys come and clear the house? And they were gracious. And in a matter of days, the house was cleared out of all the medical equipments, you know. So this system makes it easier. But
Yeah.
if you're in a country where you have to do things on your own, it might be best to ask people
help, yes.
to help you,
Yes.
you know, maybe appoint a brother or a sister or an uncle or an aunt, someone else that you could ask to help you alert this organizations, so that it just stops that trigger from reoccurring, especially when it's still fresh.
Yeah, that's a good advice.
Yeah.
So yes, let's talk about, you know, so after the funeral, and I think for me, it wasn't, his miraculous death only became final when I got the death certificate. So how do you move forward from that, really? Have you ever gone back to Tamara's grave, or was that too painful for you?
Well, it wasn't a question of it being painful. I think I just got to the point where I realized that she was no longer there. So she was in heaven. So when I pictured my daughter, I pictured her as being in heaven.
Okay.
That was just the earthly resting place. So I didn't have any attachment to her grave, you know, and at a point I started feeling guilty, like I've not been to her graveside. Shouldn't I go there? And I was like, but I don't feel any, you know, attachment to it or sentiments to it. You know, I know she's in heaven. So for me, I didn't. And I haven't been back to her grave. It's been 7 years and I haven't, you know, but I've been back to Eastbourne since then. I always go back to Eastbourne because it has such a special place in my heart because of the memories we've shared. But going back to her grave, I didn't attach any memories to that. So I haven't.
Wow.
You know?
And this just, again, this goes to show
how different people's journeys can be.
Yes, because for me, in as much as I know he's in heaven, I still have an attachment to his grave. And there's no one way to this thing. So I remember for when, you know, his first birthday, he has a twin, obviously. For his first birthday, I remember a few ladies from the local church that I attend sometimes, and they were quite involved as well on this. They've been involved in this journey. We went there on his first birthday and we just worshipped.
Oh, wow.
It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. The wind was blowing. I felt God's presence. It was really amazing. It was really an amazing experience.
Wow.
And also on when would have been his second birthday. Sometimes I don't know how to say it. Was that his second birthday or would that have been? Ooh, anyway. So I took a jog there early in the morning just by myself and, you know, just stay there for a few minutes. And it was okay. So for me, maybe because his grave, the funeral, what do you call it now? The site is near,
close to
is
you.
not too far from us. Sometimes even from my way to after work, when I was doing my graduate role, I would just feel this urge to just stop by. As a family, we've been there once together after his death. I'm not sure my husband has been, but sometimes my daughter would say she would love to go, and we would go. And I must say this, I think during his funeral, we had the dilemma: should we take the kids? Should we not take the kids? But we decided to take, so his older siblings, obviously. We didn't take his twin sister. But his older sister, who was
older brother.
9, how old was she at the time? Was she 10, 9 at the time? I can't remember, 9. 10. And his brother, we took them just to help them with their grieving journey as well. Some people decide they don't want to take their other children, but we just agree that it will be good for them to see. Because my son, who's also, we call him Prof J, asked number of questions. So where is he? Where's his body? We had to talk about spirit, soul, body. So we wanted him to see, like he being buried, even though of course the casket wasn't open, but that way we're able to say his body is in the ground, but his spirit is in heaven with God. So I'm glad that we held them, we took them on that journey with us to go to his
It's so
funeral.
important to involve children. And this is the thing, when there are children involved, I know we have an episode coming where we're going to deal with that, but it's important to think about the other people who are on this grieving journey as well. I was going to share one thing that really helped me move forward as well. Just after the funeral, my husband decided that we went to Thorpe Park.
Oh wow!
And we did some crazy rides, like crazy rides. And I kept telling myself, I just lost a daughter, so nothing could be worse. So I dived in, I screamed, I cried, I laughed my head off, and that was really good for me. So the funeral was on a Thursday. We did that on a Monday, and that immediately, just lifted my spirit off. And that's why Bible says laughter is good medicine. So when the mourners are all gone and you're faced with the reality of life without that loved one, it's good to find a way to create memories. It might be difficult, but even if it's just going for a run or sitting with a friend or laughing over a joke, those things really helped me.
Wow, amazing. And so, even right from after the funeral, it's good to, just like Stella said, create new memories, carry some old ones into this new life that you have now. Because remember that life stopped when you lost your loved one or lost whatever it is you lost. It's now time to take some of the old memories into the new and create new ones. One of the things we did, or I did particularly, was thankfully the funeral home got his footprints, his handprint, his what do you call them now?
Footprints,
fingerprints,
and
and handprints as well. So I have this necklace, as you can see here, with his little thumb. I think is that his thumb? I think it's thumb prints there.
That's his thumb print.
And also we have a picture frame of his hand and footprints as well. So that way, his siblings can always, I mean, obviously his memory is will always be in our hearts, but just to have something visual as well.
As a representation.
And the fact that we have his thumbprint and all of those things, we can always create more, we can always go back to them to create more
memories
out of them. So that was something we did to help going forward.
Oh wow, well done. We had pictures, lots of pictures, around the time when she was in hospital, and even after she died. And we also had her footprints as well. So those are things that we go to every now and again. So
awesome. Wow, today's episode has been great. Just to round off, Stella, do you have any other advice for our listeners who may be maybe in a situation where they're going to be planning a funeral soon, or be supporting someone who's planning a funeral?
So planning a funeral is no joke, like you've heard, and one of the things that I remember after seeing the funeral director was stopping by a huge ice cream parlor and eating all my favorite flavors with my husband. And I really cherished that memory, that we could smile in the midst of all that was going on. So yes, your world has stopped, but find a way in the midst to do something that might make you laugh or smile. So now when I remember that day or the events, I still have some fun bits that I remember alongside. So I know it's difficult, but it's something that you have to do. Find a way to create a memory in the midst of that, so that when you're looking back, it's not all gloom, it's not all doom, it's not all sad.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that, Stella. But before we go, I would love Stella to just say a word of prayer for all our listeners.
Father, we just want to say thank you. Thank you because you are with us. Your word says that, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with me. We ask that you would hold our hands as we go through this season, and that anyone who is in need of comfort, anyone who needs your presence, will experience that. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. So again, thank you once more for listening.
Thank you, guys.
We enjoy reading from you. You can email us on hello@whenlifestops.org.
Yes.
Leave us a comment on the podcast app that you're listening from. Leave us a rating. And please share this podcast with anyone you know who may be experiencing loss. So till next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye and God bless you.
God bless.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you found great value in this episode.
Yeah, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, review, and share. See you next week.